Hello, wonderful people. My wife and I are both 35 years old, and we have been married for 4 years. We have one child together. Usually, relationships start out of the blue, in my case. It all began when I accepted my wife Natalie's friend request on Facebook, although I didn't give her much attention on Facebook. The first time I spoke to her on the phone really sparked my interest. For some reason, I felt foolish for ignoring her for more than 3 years. We kept speaking on the phone. And one day I decided to drive all the way to Los Angeles to see Natalie. Our date ultimately resulted in a day of love declarations. She said to me, "I am madly, deeply, and completely in love with you." We got married a few months later, and we had good days and bad days in our marriage, just like any other marriage. But giving up on each other was never an option. Natalie was a lovely woman who was warm and attractive. She was very romantic and always embraced life to the fullest. Natalie had transformed our bedroom into a cozy cafe, filled with a tiny table, candles, and bouquets, where we could dine, chat, and chill, as we spoke. We were reminded of what attracted us to one another, and romance had a chance to rekindle. She was romantic to the point that she didn't want our son to be present during our alone time. She made sure he was asleep before I arrived from work, and she would make a fuss if I was weary and wasn't in the mood to sit and talk on our candlelight dinner. I didn't like having this romantic candlelight dinner arrangement on a daily basis. I wanted to play with my child, but she insisted that we needed time alone to deepen our relationship. And if we let our son take our alone time, it would become a habit, creating separation between us, no matter how tired we were. She wanted to make sure that our relationship in bed remained passionate. When our kid was ill and had a high fever, Natalie was disturbed and we had to spend the night in the hospital. We were both concerned, but as soon as we arrived home from the hospital, Natalie put our son to sleep and forced me to do the things on the bed. I was tired and only wanted to sleep when we awoke. She made a fuss and claimed that I was neglecting her and that I was seeing someone else. She kept claiming that I was losing interest in her, which was upsetting because I tried to convince her that I was just sleepy and that we had just returned from the hospital. Last year, my workplace was dealing with the Black Friday sale, and I was really busy at work. She assumed that the fact that I was arriving late from work was a sign that I was losing interest in her, so she dyed her hair and wore fashionable shorts and heavy gothic makeup to keep me interested. Despite the fact that I confessed my love to her on a regular basis and did everything I could to assure her that there was no need for her to be insecure, she continued to believe she needed to do more to spark our love. She was putting herself on crash diets to lose the weight she had gained during pregnancy so that I would be pleased. Even though I loved her unconditionally and these things didn't matter to me, when I got a promotion at work and we threw a party for my friends, my wife Natalie made sure to make it a huge deal. She invited a local band, gave an emotional speech about me, continued hugging and kissing me throughout the party, and constantly told me how proud she was of me. My friends told me I was blessed to have such a loving wife. Although I did consider myself fortunate to have such a loving wife, I was a bit worried about all this craziness since, as time goes on, your love for each other grows into something less intense but more sustainable. But my wife's love for me was growing more intense over time. I tried my best to show my appreciation for her devotion and reciprocate her favors, but no matter what I did, she would always go above and beyond for me. She was not working to care for our son, so she would come to my office for lunch and urge me to join her for lunch. I would leave work and join her for lunch, but when I declined due to my workload, she took it personally and sent me images of herself sobbing and embracing my shirt to indicate how much she missed me. these tiny gestures meant a lot to me. Despite the fact that I wasn't unromantic, but I didn't believe it was feasible to be madly in love, I still planned surprise birthday celebrations for my wife and gave us flowers, chocolates, and other gifts to strengthen our bonding. Our marriage was successful and we were happy with our lives. Christmas holidays were approaching, and my mother in Los Angeles invited all of our siblings to spend the time at her house. I was thrilled to be there with my mother and siblings, but Natalie struggled there. She was having a hard time sharing me since she was missing our private time and candlelight dinners. I reassured her that we would do all of that when we returned home because we also needed to spend time with our families. I even offered to bring her mother, but she declined, saying that she didn't like having her family around. Natalie was also having tantrums and acting blatantly rude toward my mom. My older brother Don and his children were there, and we all tried to cheer Natalie up, but she was constantly grumpy. She only acted normally around my brother Don since they shared similar tastes in music and movies, and because Don is a romantic and a dreamer as well, they would both watch movies and share music. While Natalie was watching movies with Don, I was happy to have some time alone with my mom, nephews, nieces, and my kid. My nephews and nieces were between the ages of 20 and 23. So they assisted my mom and me with cooking and grocery shopping. I took them Christmas shopping, and we bought presents for each other. Natalie didn't like the bags I bought her and my mom, and she locked herself in a room since I gave her the same gift as my mom when she had hoped for a different gift from me. She was being quite unreasonable, so I apologized to my family on her behalf and explained that she had a migraine. I didn't want to break my mother's heart by explaining to her that Natalie was furious because I had given my mother a bag that was similar to hers. Then, in an effort to calm Natalie, I promised to arrange a spa date for when we returned from our trip. She was delighted and gave me a big hug, wanted me to do the app, but I was really exhausted and fell asleep as soon as I hopped onto the bed. I got up in the middle of the night to use the restroom and discovered Natalie was not in bed. She was already angry with me, so I started to worry that she could have gone from my mother's house. I went into the living room to check for her, but she wasn't there either. I went upstairs to check in my mom's room because our little kid was sleeping with our mom. So I went to see if Natalie was there with our son, but both my mom and the baby were sleeping. I went to my nephew's room to collect the keys to his car, but when I did, I was terrified to discover Natalie on his bed and surprised to see them with no clothes. I grabbed some water off the side table and dashed it on their faces. They awoke and were surprised to see me there. Natalie, according to my nephew, came into his room and persuaded him to sleep with her. Natalie offered no convincing explanation and instead blamed me for being distant. She was thinking I was sound asleep and that everyone else was also sleeping, so she went to my nephew's room, who was only 23. All of it was so bizarre. Especially how blatantly Natalie was blaming me for her act. She was crying and accusing me of being unromantic and not giving her enough time, and when I fell asleep instead of being with her, she felt rejected, so she went to my nephew's room to get her revenge on me. I yelled at her, telling her that I didn't reject her and that I needed to sleep since I was exhausted, and as a human being I needed to sleep. I tried my best, but I was no longer able to handle her obsessive behavior because I was tired and sick of her insane behavior. After hearing our fight, my mother and brother walked into the room, and when they realized what had occurred, they were frightened. My nephew was crying, and my brother hit him and instructed him to pack his things. I then ordered my wife to leave. I wanted to slap my wife, but my mom stopped me, and I urged Natalie to leave right away. Update. I have sent my wife a divorce letter, and my mother wants me to forgive my wife, but I can't forget the time I caught her with my nephew and she didn't express any guilt. Her actions had grown toxic to me, and her claims that she cheated on me just because she was infatuated with me didn't make it acceptable. My wife is struggling with the divorce, and the court has ordered that she receive the necessary treatment. Natalie is unable to care for my son, therefore she has granted me custody of him. She continues to call me to ask for my compassion. She is not handling the divorce well. She is still fixated on me, and she refuses to admit that she cheated after my divorce. I'm content and starting to feel normal. I'm not sure if I should blame my nephew or not, but I haven't seen him since the incident, and my brother continues apologizing to me. Healthy love, in my opinion, is often related to commitment and respect for each other's needs, including the need for privacy. Unfortunately, those who suffer from obsessive love disorder never manage to move past the initial stage of infatuation and instead continue to be consumed by an intense need to possess the other person while being unable to accept rejection. I appreciate you listening to my story. Please like my story and subscribe to this channel. To grow this channel, we require your support. We value your presence here. Thank you. Have a great day.